Boris Johnson will be investigated by a Commons committee over claims that he misled Parliament about parties in Downing Street.
We're now joined by the Northern Ireland Secretary, Minister Conor Burns. Good to speak to you this morning. Of course, you were the person who, very early on, when these suggestions and allegations of rule-breaking were coming forward by the Prime Minister, tried to help him out by saying he was ambushed by a cake that then became famous. Do you now believe he did mislead Parliament?
Well, look, thank you for remembering that. That's spawned a whole industry of products you can now buy with that logo on it. It's not often you get to write a line in your obituary live on television. What I was trying to do, probably in too frivolous a way, was point out that on that day that event happened at the Cabinet Room in Number 10, the Prime Minister had a number of meetings that morning. He'd gone to Hertfordshire, he visited a school, he'd returned to have another meeting, to which the Chancellor was also turning up, and a number of people had gathered to wish him happy birthday. And the Prime Minister said on Tuesday, and I believe him, that he didn't occur to him then or subsequently that little short interlude between arriving and the meeting starting, it was a meeting to discuss government response to COVID, was a breach of the rules. But equally, he has said that he accepts the decision that the Metropolitan Police have taken. He accepts it without rancour. He and the Chancellor have both paid the fixed penalty notice and accepted the decision of the Met. What I do believe is the Prime Minister told, in good faith, Parliament what he thought were the facts at each stage. And when there were changes to that, he has corrected it. By the way, all of that has led to him overhauling significantly his Number 10 operation, changing personnel, changing reporting mechanisms, appointing a new Chief of Staff in the MP, Steve Barclay, bringing in David Canzini as Deputy Chief of Staff, new PPSs, a new Chief Whip. The Prime Minister has responded to what was not working by changing the operation in Number 10 to make sure this wouldn't happen again.
I suppose the problem is, though, isn't it, is that he should have known what the rules were because he made them.
Well, the rules, he would contend, it's very difficult because Number 10 is a workplace. It's also the Prime Minister's home. But look, he's accepted that the Met have come to the judgment the Met have come to, and he's accepted the fine. The Met are carrying on with their work as they should. When that series of work by the Met concludes, then Sue Gray will update her report, which will be published in full, and we now have the privileges inquiry from the House of Commons.
You did make the point, didn't you, that it was a workplace, and we do have to make the point that so are hospitals who were desperate for a drink at the end of a 14, 15, 16-hour shift, and they didn't have parties. No.
Well, look, the Prime Minister accepts this, and that's why when he came to the House of Commons on Tuesday, I mean, I've never seen the Prime Minister more humbled in his approach to a parliamentary statement. In just over an hour and a half, he apologised. I went through the Hansard this morning. He apologised some 42 times. Right. He is very, very sorry that this happened. He's put processes now in place, changed personnel to make sure it wouldn't happen again.
It's just a shame, I think, in a way that there was an attempt, and partly the references to cake, I think, was factored into what I'm saying here, which was it was just treated a bit frivolously. And we were just talking to Michael Rosen, and he was lying in a hospital bed in a coma. He was treated by the nurse Beth from Great Ormond Street, Beth that we just met, and these parties are going on. It isn't trivial, is it? It's not a trivial thing.
No, and Richard, I completely accept that. And I think one of the sadnesses for me of what's gone on over recent months is that there's a perception that it's sort of the British public were living this and politicians weren't. We all had people we knew who lost people. I had friends who died that I couldn't go and visit, couldn't attend their funerals. We went through this collectively as the British people. The Prime Minister was laid low with COVID himself. It's been a ghastly period in our country's history. Many people are still living with the aftermath of COVID, a brutal disease. It harmed my father very significantly to a point that we thought we might lose him. We've all been impacted by it, and I think that's one of the things that the Prime Minister possibly regrets most about what happened in Number 10 on a number of occasions, some of which the Prime Minister was present. Often the Prime Minister wasn't present when those events were taking place.
Thank you for explaining that, and Khalid went through a difficult time with your own father catching COVID there, as you explained. Can we just talk a bit about yesterday? It was slightly weird yesterday, wasn't it? We spoke to the Education Secretary and there was a three-line whip and MPs were going to vote with the government and against Labour and this plan to sort of delay the investigation into whether Boris Johnson misled Parliament. What happened?
He told us, didn't he, that it was absolutely the right thing to do, in his belief, to delay it.
And then there's this massive car crash of a U-turn yesterday. Like, what happened?
Well, in a sense, forgive me, you're talking to the wrong person. I was in Northern Ireland on Tuesday in Newry talking to business leaders and community leaders there about regeneration and skills and levelling up, in a sense, trying to get on with one of the many challenges the government is facing across both the international and domestic agenda. Look, I think essentially what happened, if I can be candid with you as much as I can and as much as I know, I think there was a concern earlier in the week that if there was a privileges piece of work, a privileges inquiry in the House of Commons, that would overlap with the investigation by the Metropolitan Police, would overlap with the publication, the completion, the updating of Sue Gray's report. It then, I think, became clear as the week wore on that the Privilege Committee would do that piece of work after the Met had finished and after Sue Gray had reported, and therefore, in a sense, the amendment became irrelevant. So the government accepted the motion.
Went ahead. I mean,
Mr.
Burns,
and the inquiry now starts.
Aren't you just fed up with all of this? Right now, the Prime Minister, I think just literally right now, we've got live images, is speaking in Delhi, trying to secure better trade with India, trying to get India to, you know, take a different stance on Ukraine in New Delhi. Sorry, forgive me. There he is talking right now. And you have to support him, just like Nadine Zahawi, Education Secretary, supported him yesterday. But aren't you fed up with the fact that everything keeps changing and things just seem to slip and slide and alter, and you have to still come out and defend something? Isn't that frustrating for you?
Oh, listen, I tell you what's massively frustrating for me, Kate. I'm a former international trade minister. I'm watching the images of the boss in India, and I was partly instrumental in prioritising the next phase of free trade agreement aspirations, and India was right up there. I'm watching that, and I'm watching him out there with an enormous sense of pride about Britain on the international stage, pursuing our globalist, internationalist, free trade agenda that will deliver prosperity.
Behaviour, he's left you having to talk about whether he did or didn't say the truth and didn't mislead. You must be so cross.
Well, I want it to be finished, as we all do. We want these inquiries to conclude. The Prime Minister expressed his own frustration on Tuesday that he can't speak out about the context of much of this. But I want to get back to the agenda of talking about delivering for my constituents, delivering in my role for the place of my birth in Northern Ireland. And I want the Prime Minister to be able to rebuild that bond of trust with the British people and get on with delivering on the agenda for which he won the biggest majority for the Conservative Party since Margaret Thatcher in 1987. But we've got to go through this, because I don't think we can draw a line under this until these inquiries are finished, until all the facts are known, and then we can level with the British people and, please God, ask them for their trust, their forgiveness and their faith in us to continue to deliver for them in their everyday lives.
Thank you. Conor Burns, Northern Ireland Secretary, thank you very much for joining us.